What's up, everybody? Well, today I'm going to be doing another video series on vacuum face-off, where I basically battle out different vacuums to see how they perform, or which one performs better. And today's vacuum face-off features this giant slew of rainbows. I got about 6 D series and 2 E series. So I'm going to give you a little run through of all of them, or a brief overview of them. Here is my chrome dome. This is the mid-70s Rainbow D2. And then next to it we have the Rainbow D3A, and then the D3C. What makes the A different from the C is mostly for that 3-pin connector at the top. Yep, this is a true. Let's see if I can do this on camera. The connection is very stiff. Yep, see? 3-pin connector, just like the D2. Where the D3C went eventually to this 2-pin connector that they've used for years. And then up here we have the D4C, and then we have the D4C SE, the D4C SE PE, also known as D4C SE PN2. We have a Rainbow E2 single speed, or E2 one speed. And then we have an E2 blue, one of the several variants of the 2-speed E series. I like this one because the color scheme is a lot different compared to the E2 gold. I thought it was too much like the 1-speed there, so I wanted to get a blue to kind of differentiate between. But basically these three run the PN2 style power brush. Those run the PN1, and then those two over there use the Eureka style power brush. That was used on, I think it was called the Eureka Rotomatic. So this is going to be quite a battle. So I'm basically going to cut away, and I'm going to fill one of the basins with water, and we'll battle it out. So basically I'm going to have to do this clip by clip, just to show one right front and center, and then I'm going to put some debris on the ground and then run it just to see how it performs. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll get started. So we will go ahead and kick things off with the senior rainbow, aka the chrome dome rainbow, the Rainbow D2. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a walkthrough to know what we're dealing with here. The motor in this is a 3-stage motor, meaning it has 3 impeller fans. And I'll turn this thing over to give you a look at the separator, because this may intrigue some rainbow owners. This has a metal separator. That is all metal, which this was long before they eventually switched to plastic to prevent rusting. And the basin's all filled with water. This is only a 2-quart basin, I would like to point that out. But 3-stage motor, metal separator. Let's get this guy back in. These latches are probably the strongest I've ever came across when it comes to rainbows. These are very tough clamps. So let's go ahead and connect this in. Yeah, it's got the little ground in the middle missing on the plug, but I don't find that a major deal. In fact, the power brush actually has a brand new motor put into it because the old one seized up and quit working, so I had to put a non-original motor in because I could not track down the original Rainbow part. But luckily, since this power brush is a Eureka power brush, I was able to get a motor that was for a Eureka. But anyway, here is the brush roll that's in it. It is an aftermarket Cleveland Wood Products brush roll. It is has very long bristles, soft bristles, I would like to point that out. But just look at how long the bristles are. I mean, I am sitting like flat and level with the power brush, and you can see just how they protrude out. So I'm pretty interested to see how this thing will perform. So sometimes this thing is a little hard to release because the power brush is kind of stiff over the years. So let's get started. Runs very quiet. See, the contents right here are actually crushed up chips that have gone stale. Again, give you a little agitation action. A little bit, but not much. Alright, next up is the Rainbow D3A, essentially a D2 in disguise, or the Transition D3, I believe that's what this should be, because this is the early version where it has the Eureka power brush instead of the one Rainbow developed for the D3C. Actually, come to think of it, they had one for the D3A, but then later switched the prong design for the D3C. You see, this is the much early style with the white hose instead of that gold color hose that Rainbow eventually went to. Pull the plug out. See, there's the 3-prong connector. I'm gonna pull the motor off real quick. Show you the separator setup. As you can see, metal separator just like the D3. Early versions of the D3 also came with a metal separator. I think even some of the D3Cs came with a metal separator before they eventually switched to plastic. And there were also different nut designs. Actually, there were different motor designs that had either a longer shaft that held the separator on with a nut, or they had this one that held it on with a bolt that actually runs on the inside, which that's what this one has. I think after they transitioned to the plastic separator, they eventually went to the longer motor shaft. But anyway, let's go ahead and put this guy back on. Oops, I snagged the cord. There we go. All right, let's put the hose back in and plug back in the power brush. Now let's go ahead and show you the power brush right now. This is the original brush roll that came on these Eureka power brushes. This is what the same one as the D2s would have had, but the one I obviously had on the D2 was replaced. But anyway, this one is all original. It has soft bristles for brush rolls, and it has these little beater bars that basically beat and sweep the carpet. So basically the performance of this would be the same as the D2 if it would have came out of the factory like this. Basically I did the replacement brush roll in the D2 just to show how it would work if it had the replacement brush roll. So anyway, let's go ahead and give this guy a run. Look at the agitation. I don't know if that's hard to make out. Next up is the Rainbow D3C. This is the rainbow that I've had for the longest and is probably my most favorite model, because this is the same one I grew up with. My grandmother used to have one, my aunt had 2 of them, and this is the one that basically sparked my love of rainbows. So let's go ahead and remove all this stuff on it right now to show you the separator setup. There is the plastic separator that they eventually switched to, and this is the later motor style that uses the longer shaft, so this is supported by a nut instead of a bolt. The fun thing about these, since they have the longer motor shaft, you could actually put a later style separator for a D4 onto this, but that's only on the versions of these D3s that have the longer motor shaft. Maybe they will fit, the D4 separators will fit on the old style as long as you retain the bolt that holds it on, but as far as I found out, they work better on these longer motor shaft models. And let's go ahead and reconnect the hose and the connector. Let's go ahead and show you the power brush. See, this is Rainbow's first designed power brush without patents from Eureka. And here's the brush roll it uses. It's basically almost the same style brush roll. The only difference is the soft bristle brush roll. Well, actually, the bristles are a little bit stiffer than the Eureka version, but the bristles aren't as long as the Eureka version. But it does have the beater bar. Well, actually, I think these are more beater plastics, as Bill from Vac Lab would call these, because they're basically plastic and they're not metal. Then again, the Eureka power brush has the plastic ones too. But you will notice, compared to the Eureka version, the beater bars and the bristles actually make a chevron pattern to funnel everything into the center suction path. And one thing that these have over the Eureka is that they have this little airflow relief valve. So if you're using this on high pile carpets, you basically do that to slough off airflow so it's easier to push. But on this plush carpet, I have no problem with that, so I just leave it on low and give it the maximum amount of airflow for a good cleaning performance. There were earlier versions of this PN1 that did not have the airflow relief, but some people that have medium pile carpet that's not like shag like this, that they have difficulty pushing this thing across their carpet, so Rainbow later added in this to solve that problem. But now, let's go ahead and get to cleaning here. But it does pick up a little bit better, in my opinion. Even though it did leave a little bit behind, but that's just mostly due to the sole plate design. Into the modern territory. Here is the Rainbow D4C. This is the early non-SE model, but more on that later. This came out in the mid-80s to replace the old D3, but this one was great because it had the revolutionary motor design that prevented water from getting sucked up into the motor should the machine accidentally tip on its side, which was a common problem with the D3s. So here's the separator that's on it. This is actually a later style, because the early separators were the same ones used on the D3, the plastic separator with these slanted fins instead of these straight ones. But they eventually went to this to gain a little bit more airflow and suction performance out of it. And it is successful. So let's go ahead and set this guy back on. Oh, power brush almost wanted to tip over on me. Let me go ahead and plug this back in. Here is the power brush. Same style power brush like the D3 uses, but I forgot to show the model number of the other one. That one was an R1650. This one is an R2800. And this uses the same style brush roll as the D3 R1650 uses. Soft bristles with beater bars. And it actually does pretty good. I argue that the bristles on this may be a little bit in better condition than the D3's R1650 power brush, but that could just be me. And for right now, let's go ahead and show you how it does in its cleaning performance. Did a better job than the D3. Okay, next up is the Rainbow D4C SE. This I have honestly enjoyed having in the collection for a while now. This was the first SE to join the collection, and it did need quite a bit of work when I got it. Many people remembered who have seen the full video I did on this thing, but this has a fully rebuilt motor. I replaced all 3 motor bearings in this thing. It was not easy to tear this thing down, but once I did learn what I was doing, it was not a bad process. So anyway, here's a look at the spider setup. Now, it may look seemingly the same as the D4 non-SE, but in reality, this version, if it comes with a gray separator, any of these D4s, then more likely than not, this has the upgraded spider setup, which is the case with this one. Rainbow eventually went this route for whatever reason to try and increase suction and airflow, but lab tests have shown that that spider setup with a little baffle inside there actually decreases suction and airflow compared to the original design. So eventually Rainbow later corrected this by going back to the old style, and those would have came with a white separator like this. They are the same one, but usually if you have a gray separator, then you've got the quote-unquote upgraded spider setup. So that was a thing for these older SE models. But yeah, it doesn't perform nearly as good as it would with the original spider setup, but not too many people are gonna know because these aren't necessarily super high performers to begin with. And here's the power brush, just to show you this guy. Same as the other two, the R1650 and the R2800, but this one is model R4370, oh there it is, R4375C. Basically the same as the others, but one big difference is the handle actually locks in the upright position. The other ones just fall straight back. And let's go ahead and show you the brush roll. This is a very different brush roll than I'm running. This is an aftermarket CWP brush roll that is in this. As you can see, it's got the Prop 65 warning. I'm going to get rid of that. That's a sticker that comes on these things once they ship. But anyway, yes, this has no beater bars and it has all bristles. So the bristles are very soft, but they are pretty dense. So you do have a little bit of agitation on this, but it doesn't create the beating effect like the beater bar brush rolls do. So admittedly, these do pick up a little better, but they don't agitate as much as the beater bar brush roll does. But it does create the same chevron pattern as the original. And we'll see how it performs in the pickup test. So, let's get started. Oh, with this, look at this. I'm not even pushing it forward and it propels itself. Let's go ahead and show you the agitation. Definitely a pretty good pickup when you go into the backstroke. It's starting to get fun here. Up next is the Rainbow D4C SE PE. What makes it a PE is simply for the fact that this is the first model to have the PN2 power brush. A totally different design, and it was both an upgrade and sometimes a downgrade. I will go over why I say that later in the video. But this has not as much changes to the motor unit. It still remains the same. But one change they did to the PE model was in the spider setup. I'm going to go ahead and tip it back and show you. Here's the spider that they use. Same style rainbow D4 fair. As you can see, it does have the white separator. Not that that's going to mean anything, but like I said, usually if you have a gray separator, then you have a different spider setup. But you have the white separator, then you have the original spider setup that tests have shown that you get the best airflow and suction performance out of these D4s. And this is the same setup that the D4C non-SE uses. But as usual, the big upgrade to these PE models comes in the form of this PN2 power brush. And I'll go ahead and show you why this thing is an upgrade in some areas, and in others it's kind of a downgrade. But let me go ahead and tip this guy back. As you can see, it's got this massive brush roller. As you see, it's got soft bristles right here. Very dense, I will add. But you have this little section right here, which actually is a brush roll stiffener. Basically, what the brush roll stiffener does is while the bristle hits the carpet, that stiffener keeps the bristle straight, so you can dig into the carpet much deeper as if it were a stiff bristle brush roll. Yet you still get the good grooming action out of a soft bristle brush roll, but excellent agitation. But the only downfall with this PN2 is how very small the suction opening is. That's honestly the biggest thing with these, because I'm going to take this off real quick. The one upgrade to this compared to the PN1 is it's much easier to service this. As you can see, the whole bottom plate just comes off by these two little latches. When they went to the E series of the PN2s, they had this little locking tab here. But anyway, right here you do have a little window to change your belt, which weirdly enough on these is run down the center as compared to on the side like the PN1s had. But yeah, see, there's the suction opening. But as it hits the bottom plate, it gets very slow. It slows down quite a bit because that's such a narrow opening. So yeah, unfortunately, I watch a lot of other YouTubers that have done airflow and suction tests on this. Well, Vac Lab to name one. And because of how narrow this opening is, these PN2s don't get as much good of airflow as the PN1s. But in my opinion, they compensate for that by making a very aggressive brush roll. So at least they got that part figured out. So this thing definitely does perform good in some ways, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's mostly good for deep cleaning compared to the PN1. And also on top of that, one upgrade this has over the PN1, this is much easier to control than the PN1. But enough of that, let's go ahead and get to the test here. Show you just how aggressive the agitation is. See some of that dirt shaking? But man, look, even though the obvious mark of shame, this still has just great pickup performance. we get into a machine that is Rainbow's biggest redesign. The Rainbow E2 1-speed. This was Rainbow's significant change in transition into the modern era. Because this E-Series was definitely an upgrade over the D-Series. For one, it comes with a post-motor filter. The D-Series has no filters at all. All it has is for filter is just water. Which this one, it pulls, obviously still uses water as a filter, but it exhausts out clean air thanks to this massive post-motor filter, which on the E2s was a different design compared to the first version of the E-Series, where the back end actually was held on by screws instead of two bottom latches. And so here is the hose connection. Let me go ahead and pull this off right quick to show you the separator as usual. But anyway, here is the separator and spider setup. It was quite a big redesign. This is, from what I understand, this is still a 3-stage motor, but this is what Rexair likes to call a hurricane motor, meaning this thing produces way more power than the D-Series. So let me go ahead and set this guy back on. See if I'm plugging this back in right. There we are. And as you can see, the power brush, this still retains the PN2 style of power brush, but they have since liked to call this the PN2E. The only difference why it says it's the E is so that people know that that is specific to the E-Series. Which here is the brush roll that's in it. This is the genuine brush roll with the soft bristles and the stiffeners, essentially the same as the D4SE PN2. But the only difference is to hold the bottom plate on, this one's actually held in by this little locking tab. You have to unhook that with a flat head. Then you could pull the latches and take the bottom plate off. But it still has the same center belt. And even though this doesn't have the best airflow, at least they updated the suction motor, so it definitely performs way better with this motor. But I imagine if only they made power brushes like the PN1, I imagine you have excellent airflow to the power brush to get much better deep cleaning performance, because this thing still doesn't do as good a job as deep cleaning as its predecessor would have, but at least it compensates for that with an aggressive brush roll. So enough of that being said, let's go ahead and give this thing a run. Sounds very different from the D-Series. right, now for the grand finale. The Rainbow E2 Blue. This is the newest rainbow in my collection, and it's my 2-speed E2 model. And this one honestly is my favorite model because I love the color scheme to these blue models. From the decals on the power brush to everything across the side here. I just loved this little text with the little bubbles right there, and even on the front of the machine too. So let's go ahead and open this guy up to show you the separator setup. See, there's the separator. One interesting thing on these 2-speed models is that the nut that holds the separator on is actually plastic. Nothing says pay more for me than plastic. Well, I'm just kidding about that part, but I think Rainbow's real reason for going to a plastic nut was to prevent rust issues from all the moisture buildup. These things can eventually prone to rust and stick themselves to the motor shaft, making them near hard to remove. So eventually they went to the plastic nut to solve that problem. Let's go and latch it up, hook the hose up, and see if I can. These things have a very, very tight connection. Come on. There we go. Didn't have it hooked up right for a second there. And here's the PN12. Just the same as the 1-speed model, but the only difference is, for whatever reason, later versions of this PN2E didn't have the indicator light to let you know it's running, nor the reset button should something get jammed in the brush roll and shut the motor off to save it. Don't know why this is, but it is what it is. And here's the brush roll. And this is a brand new brush roll that I put into this thing. I did this simply because I didn't really like the aftermarket CWP brush roll that came with this when I bought it. I don't know why. I'm not too sure if they came factory with that brush roll in later years or if the previous owner replaced it. But I decided to put a genuine roller on it because these things are awesome with their soft bristles and the brush roll stiffeners that definitely do a great job in agitation. And I will show you that later. But for now, let's go ahead and get to the performance of this. So let's go ahead and switch it on. Well, just for fun, that's how it sounds on low speed. And now, here is high speed. I love the way it sounds when it turns on. And that was pretty much it for the entire contest. Well, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed that very lengthy face-off of all the rainbows that currently reside in my collection. Please stay tuned, and don't forget to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.